Hi everyone, it's Nicole Spohr and welcome back to my channel. Today we have some big, bold floral birthday cards featuring no-line coloring. So I have been wanting to create some no-line coloring cards with the Daisy bouquet and sunflower garden images from Simon Says Stamp for quite a while, and I thought, why not today? So I am going to start with the Daisy bouquet first. This is a kind of long video. I did try to include all of the coloring. It is no line coloring. These are big images. They take quite a bit of time to color, so this is not going to be like a speedy type of project. But if you're looking for a project to grow your skills and to create some really beautiful florals, hopefully this is inspiring. I know you guys ask me for the zig no line coloring videos all of the time. I am going to speed through parts of the coloring, so I will try to color some of it. It is still sped up, yes, with a little bit slower sped up, I guess, if you want to call it that, and then I will speed it up quite a bit just to save a little bit of time. In real time, these cards did take me almost 3 hours to create. So I always like to give you guys like the nitty-gritty on that, just so you know. Sometimes we've got quick and easy projects, sometimes they're a little bit more time involved, but hopefully, like I said, this gives you some fun ideas on how to color. And I just want to throw this out here too, especially with the Daisy bouquet image, because it is a little bit smaller than the sunflower garden. In the Daisy bouquet stamp set, there are some individual daisies, so maybe you want to do something a little bit simpler and just maybe take 1 or 2 of the daisy images on your card. You can totally do that as well. My goal with these was to create a 1-layer background. It's going to have our no line coloring. It's going to have a text, a very faint text background. It's going to have a foiled frame and our sentiments stamped directly on the card base. And then I did add a little bit of dimension with a butterfly and some hearts to finish it off. But other than that, pretty flat. But I'm trying to add that dimension with the rest of the layers I'm adding to the design. But it all starts with this coloring. Now I want to talk a little bit about the coloring of these images. I am coloring the center of my daisies with this is called Sand. It's one of the newer Zig Clean Color Real Brush marker colors, and then I'm also using bright yellow and yellow, and I'm doing kind of a little dot design. So you'll notice I went around the perimeter of the center of the daisy with a little bit of a dot. I'm not using the tip of the marker and coloring. There's going to be a lot less blending in some of the areas for this card. So I am never going to smooth out my marker over the center of actually any of the flowers on either card. It's going to be this dot detail to give a ton of texture and interest. Now I will say the first few petals of this flower are not my favorite. That generally happens when I'm coloring in a flower. It sometimes takes me a minute to get my bearings and to really get the stroke and how I want to shade it. But I do kind of redeem it and come back and fix these a little bit later. There are going to be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 color combinations for these daisies. And I'm going to tell you guys, this is my best hint, or tip, I guess I should say. I knew I wanted to color this, but I was looking to do something more interesting than all white petals, all pink petals, or purple, or whatever the case may be. I wanted a variety, but I wanted to maybe limit my variety. I hope that makes sense. I actually typed in daisies into, I think, Google, and I looked at some pictures of real life daisies and then also some illustrations and whatnot. And I actually came across an illustration of some daisies. I don't even know where it was from, but it had these 4 color combinations in it. And that is what inspired my card today. So sometimes if you're looking for some inspiration, don't be afraid to kind of go outside of the card making world, I guess, if you will, and garner that inspiration wherever you can. So my colors totally came from some illustration I found elsewhere, and I just made it my own because the illustration isn't exactly like this. It was similar-ish, but not exactly this. I just really, like I said, wanted something that was going to complement each other really nicely. This color combination is peach pink and sugared almond pink. I am going to have all of the colors listed in the description box down here on YouTube as well as over on my blog. So if you want to know any of the colors at any time, you can find that information there. I did not put them on the screen today. A couple of reasons. It's a lot of coloring. I zoomed in pretty close. I did not want the words to cover up anything that I'm doing. And second of all, the names for these markers, some of them tend to be long and they take up a lot of room on the screen. I know a lot of you really like it on the screen. Sometimes, most of the time I do. I've been doing it a little bit less lately just because you can find that information. I always include it on my blog, and I've been including it in the YouTube description, and I think that that's almost a little bit easier just because you can, you don't have to stop the video or anything like that. You can just, when you're done watching the video, scroll down in the video description, check that out, write down any marker colors that maybe, interest you or that you would like to maybe look into, and hopefully that works. I know, can't please everybody, obviously, but hopefully that still allows you to be able to find what you're looking for. So as I mentioned, I started the flower petals and just kind of wasn't super happy, but by the end, absolutely love it. And here is what I did. I started at the center and I pulled out with the peach pink color, and then I kind of went and pulled that color out with sugared almond pink. Now, I did go back with peach pink on this flower only, and I added in a little bit more definition on some of the petals. You will notice none of my coloring today is going to be super blended out. And that's what I really wanted to show you, because when you're finished, you have much more realistic, interesting looking petal. So I really want some white to show through, and that was really, really important to me when coloring in these images. I also wasn't super sure if I was going to love the flower centers. I actually ended up totally loving them so much. Once you have all of the flowers complete, I think it looks gorgeous. And I will tell you guys right now, my two favorite flowers on this card are the white flower, believe it or not. I have had such a struggle getting a good white daisy, and I think I finally figured out what I like. So I can't wait to show you that here in a minute. And the red, I pulled in one darker shade for the red daisies, and I think it makes all of the difference. I'm using my favorite carmine red and light carmine, but the deeper, darker red color we're going to use here, which is called deep red, really will be what I think sets this apart. So I did do a couple of flower centers, and again, you'll notice dot detail. This is something a little different than I've done in the past, but I think, again, I'm looking for a little bit more, air quote, realistic approach to my flowers. And so that's why I kind of did this instead today. You can always go back in and add a little bit more of the darker colors as you want. I also really loved in the illustration that I found that there was a lighter pink and a darker pink, almost a pinky purple daisy. So that is what we're doing now. The colors we're using for this are deep pink and pink. So yes, lots of different pink colors. And I'm gonna go in again, kind of about 1 or 2 petals at a time. I found that working either 1 petal at a time or just a few at a time really helps. This tends to be overwhelming. Like if you would try to do all of the flower petals at once, that is my tendency. I want to go in and add all of the dark color. I don't want to be switching back and forth constantly, but I'm going to tell you guys, I found with this entire project, both cards, by doing 1, 2, 3 petals at a time instead of the whole flower, my results were so much better than they've been in the past. So it was really worth it to just kind of keep flipping. So you'll notice as I add the dark and then I come back with the light, and I did even add in a little sugared almond pink here in certain areas for the lighter parts of these flower petals. I'm making sure to not be super perfect with blending it out. That's going to add some nice highlights. It also adds the detail for each petal. And we're going to continue this kind of all the way around the flower. Here is my next tip. I am terrible at following my own advice. This poor background had to have several spots erased because I got my hand in the ink. We're using water-based markers. Real quick, before I tell you what I've done, this is Bristol Smooth cardstock. You guys ask me about that all the time. When I use the Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers, the only cardstock I ever use, no matter what I'm making or coloring, I should say, with these markers, is Bristol Smooth cardstock. And that's because anything else I've used, I have not gotten these results. I tried several things when I first started with these markers about 8 years ago or so, and really, I really kind of wanted to throw them in the trash, to be honest. I know I've heard that from several of you guys as well. And using Bristol Smooth cardstock was a game changer. It is worth it. You can color Copics on Bristol Smooth and things like that, but really, I save mine only for zigs since I have other cardstock I like for the other markers and mediums, but you can do lots of things. You can ink blend on it, you can stamp on it, you can color with Copics or other alcohol ink markers. I have never tried, I don't think, colored pencils, but I'm sure you probably could. But just if you have zigs and you want these kind of results, use Bristol Smooth cardstock. So worth it. So I used Bristol Smooth cardstock. I colored with Lawn Fawn Jellyfish No Line Coloring ink. This is a fantastic ink if you want the no line coloring look. Look at those flower petals. Look at the little white highlights. There were a few too many white highlights, so that's where the sugared almond pink is coming in, and I just kind of blended it out a little bit. Gives me a little bit lighter highlight, but still gives me that detail. And then we're going to go in with platinum brown, gray tint, and a blender. Mostly though, just platinum brown and gray tint for the white petals. Definitely do not want to over color anything. Also, I would highly recommend trying to color in the white flower first before the pink, especially if you don't have tons of practice. Any lighter color like gray tint or the blender, if you touch a dark color, red is the worst, but pink can be kind of tricky as well. It can bleed a little bit if you touch that. I ended up actually having super good results here, but I always like to mention that, especially if you're new. And generally, I won't color anything red first. That will be the last thing, especially if it touches something else. So the thing I did, my hand smeared the ink in a couple places, and I ended up having to take a sand eraser and erase it away. So it hasn't really happened yet. I don't have enough color down, but or I haven't put my hand in the color, I should say. I do try to move my paper quite a bit as I'm coloring to keep my hand out of it. I would suggest grabbing a scrap piece of paper. You're going to see me use a Lawn Fawn Post-it to help, keep my hand out of it eventually. But look at this, you guys. I know that in theory, platinum brown and gray tint sound like that totally shouldn't work for a white flower, but it's amazing. look at the detail. I want to do an entire bouquet of white daisies now. This color combination is one that I actually use for white critters all of the time. Who knew that it would be fantastic for daisies as well? I'm totally thrilled with the results. I think the depth and dimension that you get with these is incredible. Don't blend it out too much. That's my biggest tip for all of these flowers. Don't blend it out too much. Kind of leave some of those darker areas and whatnot. Now grab your stamp set. If you need to kind of see, like if it's a little bit hard to see like where the stems are, or maybe if there's a flower petal you're missing, grab your stamp set and move it right next to what you're working on. This will allow you to kind of have a much better idea of where things need to go. So I used it for the stems for my daisies. And here's a good example of what I was talking about. You can see that there's an individual daisy stem with like a little bud. That would be cute. There's an individual daisy flower. And then on the other side of the stamp set that is not shown, there's like a trio of daisies, plus there is an individual stem and so there's a daisy flower. The one in the upper left corner of this background that doesn't have a flower center, there's one like that. And then of course there's the open one that you can see. So you could really kind of intermix either one of those on the stem, or, you know, create a whole kind of little row of them, whatever you want to do. For my stems for this card, we're using green, light green, and yellow green. Definitely brighter colors. The sunflower card is going to use a little bit more of the mossy colors for some of it, although there's a lot of greenery on that one. So I do pull in several different color combinations. But I'm just going to kind of go in and add a little bit of the green here so that it shows off nicely. And then remember that flower right there above is going to be red. I want to do my greens first and do my reds last. This is also going to be important for the flower center. Do that yellow flower center first, then do the red flower. So I'm just adding in a little bit more here, because again, this flower up here, I know it's down, but it's up when the card's going the right direction, will be red as well. There's two of the lighter pink flower daisy and two of the red, and then I only did one white and one bright magenta. I think it's starting to come together. What do you guys think? I would love to know if you have tried no line coloring. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you have A, tried zigs, B, if you've tried no line coloring. Definitely leave me a comment. Let me know what kind of things you would like to see me color with this technique in the future. Florals are always a good go-to. I love it for critters as well. So please drop me a note, because I'm always looking for suggestions and things like that. Okay, we're gonna kind of blend out. I kind of got messy here, but it ends up working out okay. Just gonna blend it out a little bit. And don't worry too much. You know, you can always kind of fix it or not. I have kind of learned to let some things go. In the past, I would restamp and start recoloring, and I would be furious, like at myself, so mad with little mistakes. And I have learned to kind of let things go and just let it be more of artistic, you know. I'm not die cutting this, for one thing. There are coordinating dies though, if you'd like them. But I'm not die cutting this. I'm not worried. No one's going to know, because this is a no line coloring, that I maybe made the stem a little bit wider than it originally was. There's not a black outline. No one knows. So definitely just kind of go with the flow here. Okay, so I think these red petals, and like I was saying earlier, just like the white, these red petals end up being amazing. I can't even believe how much I love them. I didn't think I would love them this much, but I really think the difference is this deep red color. So I barely added any, mostly towards the center or where petals would overlay each other. And we're going to use the deep red, carmine red, and then light carmine. It'll take a few petals to really show this, but leaving white highlights in each of the petals totally makes a difference. So this is more of a flicking or feathering motion rather than, you know, outlining each petal and then blending it in with the colors. Really, really work on trying not to blend out. Using the tip of your marker, you can see I'm just laying down little bits of color, little tiny strokes with my dark color. Like so. Then we're going to go in with our carmine red and pull that out a little bit more, maybe outline a petal or two a little bit more. Again, small little strokes with this marker, just adding additional color. And then we're going to take the light carmine and kind of pull in from the outer edge and then also from the center, but still doing that same kind of stroke with the tip of the marker and not blending, leaving little white highlights. It's really starting, you can kind of see it now that I have several petals. So let me move my hand around. I do think this is maybe where I smear something. I can't remember. There's several times I smeared something. You guys, I know better. I'm always so annoyed with myself when I do silly things like that. Little pieces of stem that I noticed, so I went ahead and grabbed my greens and fixed that real quick too. And again, 1 or 2 petals at a time. I really think that makes all of the difference. It's hard to do. It's hard for me to do because my natural inclination is to go and add all of the dark color, all of the mid-tone color, all of the light color. That's what I would normally do. But I think doing one at a time just gives you a little bit more precision and allows you to really be in the moment with each individual petal. Oh my goodness, I just love it so much. Can you imagine? I think a bouquet of red and white daisies, wouldn't that be beautiful? I have so many ideas now. I loved coloring these so much. Every once in a while, I'm inspired to really sit down and do a long, I call it more of a long-term project, even though it's not. I did it all in one day, but where it's not super quick and easy. A lot of the cards I make, unless I'm making multiples, but even at that, generally the card itself, if I was making one, is done in an hour, hour and a half or so maybe. But with these, they really did take time, and it's just because it is so much coloring. But so relaxing and fun. Turn on a good audiobook, turn on a movie or a TV show, and watch. In fact, this is a great time. You guys, I am looking for some new Audible books to listen to. I listen to a lot of Audible because it doesn't take away from work, like coloring or putting cards together or whatever it is. And I can listen to it and I'm not looking at something. I don't want to be constantly looking at something. I've done that. I did binge watch Yellowstone and I watched a lot of it while I was working. But I found myself having to pause the video because I got so invested in the show. So I prefer audiobooks, but I am at a loss for something good. So if you guys have some great suggestions, drop me a note below. I would love to hear. I like a lot of different genres, so definitely, whatever. You guys just tell me what you're reading. I would love to know. Okay, I am going to speed up the video. I've shown you all 4 colors in a little bit slower coloring time. So yes, this is super speedy. It wasn't this speedy in real life. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could color this fast? Now, this flower doesn't show the flower center. So for this one, I added quite a bit more of the deep red. And I even went back and added a little extra of that at the end. But I think you can still get the same amazing detail even though you don't have the contrast of the flower center showing. Oh, I just love it so much. I really, really, really love this project. And there's that deep dark red again. And then we have one more light pink flower before we move on to finishing the card. Now, I want to talk a little bit about that. You've spent all of this time coloring. It's a little scary. I knew all along I was going to do this. If you guys have followed me for any length of time, you know one of my favorite things to do is to stamp a text background, a subtle text background, over a stamped image, over a stenciled background, whatever it might be. I love the text. Well, and especially when using zigs on Bristol and I'm doing a big piece like this, I didn't want to ink blend because I was afraid the ink blending brush might smear the water-based zig markers. And I just feel comfortable with my go-to. So it is scary. You don't want to mess up your background. My suggestion is to do a super light color that's going to complement the design, and it will be very, very subtle. So both backgrounds are super, super subtle. This color that I'm using is the Simon Says Stamp Fog Gray cardstock. They do have Fog Gray cardstock. This is the Fog Gray ink, and it's a very light gray. This is the My Favorite Things Happy Birthday background. It's one of my very, very favorite. My Favorite Things has some of my very favorite text backgrounds because it's a small text. And I am going to stamp that on this background. Now, I did wipe away some of the ink in the center before I stamped it, and then I thought, you know, it looks good. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more ink, make sure that it's stamped well. I noticed I missed a spot, and you can see that the flowers are still the star of the show, but that text background adds just a little something to that stark white background, especially if you don't want to ink blend. Now, for both of my cards today, I am going to trim them to 4 by 5 1/4. I started with the bigger background, and then I'll trim it down just a tiny bit. The other scary thing is foiling this. Now, I will say if you want to foil first to make sure that you get a straight foiled frame, I was living dangerously, you guys. And I was sweating it the whole time I foiled these backgrounds. I would say that was it was a last minute decision. I knew all along I was going to do the text background and I was going to stamp my sentiments directly on the card. The foiling was a last minute decision after I kind of did it, and I was like, ooh, I think a foiled frame would be beautiful. And then I'm like kicking myself thinking you should have foiled that frame first. Now, you would have thought, because I decided after this card, and I did them complete, well, mostly I did the coloring for each card, and then I did the finishing together. But you would have thought after I did this one, I would have said, oh girl, foil the other one before you stamp it. Do you think I did? No, I did not. I got incredibly lucky, and I taped that foil plate. You're going to see that when I'm done with coloring the second card. I taped that foil plate. I double, triple, quadruple checked my taping to make sure it was taped in place and wasn't going to shift, because I did not want to ruin all of my hard work. Now, I am stamping Greetings from Sunflower Garden. Sunflower Garden is the second stamp set we're going to use for the second card today. I love the font for the happy birthday in this. I actually don't have the dies for this stamp set. I don't know why. But there is coordinating dies for this. So if you wanted to, you could stamp these on a separate piece of paper and then die cut them and add them to your card. So I'm stamping happy birthday and then hope your birthday is blooming with happiness. Isn't that a beautiful sentiment? I love this. I'm really, really excited to send this off to a recipient here in February. Love how this turned out. So we're going to stamp all of this with black ink. I want it to be super dark, bold, and show up really, really well. When we get to the second card, we'll talk a little bit about how it wasn't quite as effective on that card because there's not as much white space, and how I fix it. Because sometimes you just have to adjust and fix, but I love it. I love how this turned out. If this card didn't take so long to color, I would honestly make a ton of these because I loved it so much. So on my scrap of Bristol smooth cardstock over here on the side, I'm trying out some green color combinations, and this is my second background. Now I know it's a little bit hard to see. This is Sunflower Garden, and it is a big, bold piece. It is gorgeous. I really want to try to do something. My friend Callie Person actually watercolored this because it's a huge stamp. This is only a portion of it. She watercolored a big piece and then framed it for wall art, and I want to copy it so bad, because I just think it's so beautiful. But this is an incredible image. So this is going to be colored with all greens and yellows. I have 3 different green color combinations. So let's talk about our first green color combination. That is going to be like the stems and the bigger leaves. That is going to be moss green, evergreen, and dark yellow. I believe all 3 of these are brand new colors, or brand new to me. They've been out for a couple months now. I've had mine since I think the mid-December, end of December, and I'm just getting to using some of these new colors. I will link to another video at the end of this one where I used a big bold floral from the February Simon Says Stamp Card Kit. And I did a watercolor technique with zigs, and I used a bunch of new colors in that as well. So in case you want to see some of the other new colors, I love that they're filling in because I felt like there were some holes, and they're definitely adding to that here. So next up, I'm going to color the center of the sunflowers. Now there's going to be a ton of repetition in coloring in this design as well, so I will speed this up after I've colored the first initial images, but I'm using deep brown, deep brown, mid brown, and sand for the center of my sunflower. And again, this is going to be all little dots. This is much bigger than the center of the daisy, but again, it's all about texture. The petals are going to be colored just like the daisy petals, where they're not super smoothed out. I want them to have a lot of texture. I want them to have that great detail. But it all starts with the flower center. So I went around the perimeter with deep brown, dark brown. Nope, it's deep brown. Sorry, you guys. The exact name is listed down below. Deep brown. Then we're going to go over the whole thing with mid brown. Just kind of go round and around. I added in a little sand that just gives a little bit more color. And then I'm going to go back with deep brown. And that's to just fill in and make sure it looks really deep and dark in the center of my flowers, sunflowers. I also have another video up on my channel where I stamped this image with embossing ink and heat embossed with white embossing powder, and then did more of the watercolor-ish type technique. So definitely I will drop a link to that down below as well if you want to check that out. That was when this kit was brand new. The white embossed outline is fantastic if you are just starting out with watercoloring and you want something that has a little bit more control, because the white outline will help hold that color in place. You can use any coloring medium you like there. So there is my flower center. I know it doesn't look great yet, but I promise it's going to look good. Now, my favorite color combination here, I did start with a color combination I did not totally love. That's okay though. But we're going to end up with sand, mustard, and yellow. I know it sounds like it shouldn't go together. I did try the pale yellow first. Just wasn't quite my vibe. I wasn't feeling it. So I will fix that. The yellow is going to be a little bit brighter, and I think it really brightens up the sunflower leaves a little bit. Just like I did with the daisy, we're going to pull that color from the center, and then we're going to pull the sand color out with mustard, and we're going to finish with yellow. And I want quite a bit of yellow to show. And this is one of those that I think doesn't look great until you get a little bit more of the flower colored, and then you can really kind of see the vision. So let's do a few more petals. I again worked in small batches. I am going to speed this up after we color in a few more of these to save some time. I do want to talk about the other green color combinations that we're using. So I'm also going to use, for like the little teeny tiny flowers, we're going to use deep green and smoky yellow. I believe both of those are brand new colors. And then we're going to use two of my favorites that have been out, green and light green, for some of the other petals. This gives us 3 different green color combinations throughout the entire design. With so much greenery, I felt like it added a little bit of interest to have several different color combinations. And I will talk a little bit more about those colors here in a minute. I just wanted to make mention of that, since in the finished photo you definitely notice that there's more than one color. This background has significantly more to color because it's a much bigger image, but like I said, worth it. In the end, it is an absolutely gorgeous image. It's probably one of my favorite stamp sets from 2021 from Simon Says Stamp. I love sunflowers. I live in Kansas. It's the sunflower state. So sunflowers are kind of a near and dear to me anyway. I come from a agricultural farming background. My dad farmed for many, many years until he retired. My whole dad's side of the family were farmers, and I don't know, so I just equate my childhood and kind of my, you know, history, I suppose, if you will, with Kansas and sunflowers and all of that good stuff. So I just really love them. And like I said, I want to color and frame this for my house because I think it could be a really beautiful art piece. And hopefully I can work on that maybe this weekend even a little bit. It's kind of my plan. I'm spending the weekend with some friends, and I don't generally even though we get together and we make cards and stuff, I generally don't, since most of my cards are filmed. And so I love to have a project of something like this to work on as we chat and craft and have fun. Okay, this is the green and light green, and then I just used the deep green and smoky yellow, is that right? Yes, for the little flowers. So it just is a tiny bit difference in color. You'll also notice I'm leaving lots of white spots on some of those petals. I did smooth out the sunflower petals a little bit more, just for that little bit of difference. But I'm going to speed through a lot of this, just simply because otherwise the video would be hours and hours long. And more flowers, so lots and lots of sunflowers. I left the coloring in just to kind of, I think it's interesting to watch it take shape. I love watching it kind of in that fast motion and seeing all of the little colors and then the images come to life. Here's my little sticky note. I got smart. I'm going to protect my work surface so I do not smear everything. And I think mustard is probably one of my favorite colors, believe it or not. Mustard, so I feel like yellows and zigs, really in lots of marker, different kind of coloring mediums, sometimes are hard to find, at least in the color I want. Mustard hits it the closest for me. When I need, like, I use it to color a moon a lot. It's a great yellow if you don't want a bright lemony yellow. My go-to for bright rainbows is the bright yellow and yellow. But if you want it to be have a little bit more of a rich undertone, mustard is the way to go. So that's what I'm using here. And look, you can really see it coming to life. I've got quite a bit colored. We're speeding right on through. Mostly just that bottom left corner of this panel. And there's a lot of greenery down here. This is our last sunflower. So there's basically 4 most sunflower that you see in this scene. I mean, there's a little bit chopped off on the edges. And then a half or a partial sunflower up at the top. So 5, which I love that there's 5. I like that there's that odd number of yellow little highlights or spots on the card. And then there's lots of greenery. And by using several different green color combinations, it adds to the interest so that there's some definition of the sunflower stems and leaves, and then maybe some other foliage. So it looks a lot more interesting. Add a little bit more here and there. You can see that I kind of went back to my old way. I did all the rest of those petals. I got so close to the end and I was like, let's just do it. And then we're going to go in, add all of our brighter green color. If you go over something with, like, you might notice I have to go back with a light color usually. If I color over a stem or something, I'll just fix it. These are water-based markers, and you generally can, as long as you're not using something super dark, you can get away with kind of fixing that. So like if I was doing the feathering over a stem for a leaf, I was able to fix it. Okay, I am done coloring. I am going to trim that background down to 4 by 5 1/4 after I stamp it with my background stamp. This time I'm going to use Simon Says Stamp ink in KHAKI, which is another light color, but it's a light brown. I felt like that worked better for the sunflower background. I also stamped Happy Birthday and another sentiment. Now, the bummer for this is that the sentiment really blends into the foliage, so I will show you how I fix that in a minute. I think Happy Birthday looks fine, but the rest of it needs a little bit of work because it's a little hard to read. I'm going to trim down some Spellbinders Gold Glimmer foil to work with the amazing Essential Duo Lines Rectangle Glimmer plates. These are one of my absolute favorite products ever. Any rectangle glimmer frame I love. And it's going to go right around the edge of this panel. So this is where I was talking about it would have probably been good to foil first, stamp second, and then color. The foiling will resist the color. And so you definitely, if you want to do something similar, please foil first, just in case you don't foil straight. Now, it worked out for me this time, but I will tell you in the past, I have not foiled straight and I have been so angry at myself. So that is my best hint. Now you're going to notice I am checking my edges. I'm eyeballing it, yes, but it's really hard to see. You want to put the dull side of the foil down. That is going to be the side that foils, so the shiny side up. And I'm taping it in place with a little repositionable tape. And I checked it, triple checked it, like I said, over and over and over. So my Glimmer hot foil system is warming up. Once I have that all taped together, I'm going to place it on the machine. I'm going to heat this up. When it's heated up, I'm going to run it through my Spellbinders die cutting machine. Nice and easy and slow for the best application. And then I'm going to very carefully peel off my Post-it tape, my foil, hot foil plate, and the foil to reveal the foiling underneath. There is a little overfoil. You can take an eraser and erase that away, which I did off camera, and it's perfect. I love it, you guys. It looks so pretty and it adds the perfect finishing touch to a very floral and coloring heavy card. So let's go ahead and do this again for the sunflower background. Again, and this can't be overstated enough. Like, this piece of Post-it tape I used was not sticking. I kept trying to use it and I was like, this is dumb. Get a new piece of tape, because if you ruin the hour's worth of coloring you just did, you will be so upset. So I actually grabbed a new piece of tape and I'm gonna just check it constantly. And then we're gonna foil this one as well. You can foil this in any color you want. I thought gold would be the prettiest here. I tend to go with gold a lot. So I'm gonna slide that in. I always tape the frame to my cardstock panel background first. Then I slide the foil in place and I tape down the other side. You want to make sure that the foil is completely under all sides of the frame. And then we're just going to heat this up. And once it's heated up, we will run it through our Spellbinders Platinum die cutting machine again. And nice and easy, even rolling through. And I will peel off this background, or this foil plate and foil. And another beautiful background. There is a bit of overfoiling, and I will just erase that with my sand eraser, and we're gonna fix our sentiment. So I take a stiff, dry paintbrush and kind of try to see if that will get rid of any of the overfoiling first. And here's that sand eraser. I'm being careful not to erase right over the foiling I want to keep, because it will dull it, but around the edges, and I'm just checking to see if there's any other little spot that needs that erasing, if there's any foiling. Your background, you want to make sure it is completely dry before you foil it, and then I just wipe away anything with my paintbrush. So here are my two backgrounds. They're beautiful, just like this. Now, like I said, I don't feel like on the sunflower card that my sentiment shows up great. I ended up stamping my sentiment on a scrap of black cardstock with clear embossing ink, heat embossing with white embossing powder, die cutting with a Simon Says Stamp Sentiment Labels die, and we're going to pop it up with foam adhesive. It makes it a lot easier to read. Happy Birthday is bold enough that it shows up. I just didn't think that the other sentiment showed up great. It was probably fine, but I think that it shows up so much better on the black cardstock. So here's that. We'll run it through one way, and then we'll just flip the die around and run it through another. You can also just trim that out with a paper trimmer, but you guys probably know, if you follow me, how much I love these sentiment labels dies. I keep them on this magnetic paw all the time. I don't even put these sentiment label dies away anymore. I always have them on this paw for easy use, because I generally use them probably 99% of the time when I craft. Okay, finishing details. I wanted to add a butterfly to each card, just one, and I'm going to use the Simon Says Stamp Beautiful Butterflies stamp set, the smallest butterfly from the stamp set. I didn't like it in the jellyfish ink. You can see kind of faint outline there. I think you lose a lot of the detail of the butterfly, so I opted to go ahead and stamp it with black VersaFine ONYX black ink on Bristol Smooth cardstock and color in with some Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I colored them both the same and then quickly realized that the blues don't look good on the bright daisy card. They look great for the sunflower card, but not the daisy card. So I'm going to actually switch that and color another butterfly with some pinks and brighter yellows for that card. But I can save the other butterfly for something else. But the black ink will really complement the black of the sentiment, as well as you don't lose all of the detail of the beautiful design. So we're just going to simply die cut this, glue this to each card. And then add a few finishing details to complete it. So here, I started the second one and I was almost going to use mustard again, but I'm going to switch to bright yellow and yellow instead. It's going to look a lot better, I think, for that daisy card. And then my bright pink, dark pink and pink for the rest of the butterfly. So once we have this colored, we will die cut this butterfly and then secure each of these to the cards. I only put liquid adhesive right down the center of each butterfly, and then I use some tweezers to kind of clamp them in place while the glue dried. That leaves the butterfly wings loose, which gives them a little bit more lift and interest. You could put foam adhesive under them if you want to. I opted not to today. I didn't really feel like I needed to do that, but you totally could if you wanted. Foam adhesive back behind our sentiment strip for the sunflower garden card. And then we will finish with a scattering of like some little red hearts, of course, on both. And we're just going to kind of scatter those throughout each card. So I'm going to play around with placement. I think I did about 3 on the daisy card and 4 maybe on the sunflower. Then we're going to secure each of these panels to a white top fold card base. Remember, the panel background measures 4 by 5 1/4, so it's about 1/4 of an inch smaller than the card base, leaving a nice white border all the way around, which also serves as an additional layer to the design that doesn't add bulk. Both of these cards are very mail friendly, or postal service friendly, maybe I should say, simply because they don't have a ton of bulk. All of the layering is fairly flat with the exception of these butterflies and hearts, and I guess the sentiment strip on the one card, but otherwise everything is super flat. I love that. I love a card that I don't have to worry so much about it going through the mail. So here we're just gonna add our final, I didn't like where I added that heart, so let me fix that real quick. I couldn't decide exactly where I wanted that to go. We'll decide here in a minute. Let's go ahead and secure our card to our card base. I wanted to show you how that looks. And there is one card all finished, and then we will finish the second one. I think the blue butterfly here really shows up nicely, and it matches the color scheme of the sunflower card much better. And then the bright pink butterfly matches the theme of the daisy card so much better. And there we go. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these no line coloring big bold floral cards featuring supplies from Simon Says Stamp. The supplies I use to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my Patreon members. If you would like to become a member of Patreon, please click the link down in the description below. Each month for the top tier of my Patreon, we do an exclusive YouTube live. Plus, all of my Patreon members have different perks and great things like early access to videos. Please remember to subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new card making video. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.